Hello, you golfing legends, and welcome back to another episode of the original Off Course. I'm your host, Dan Edwards, and joining me this week is Stephanie Luttrell. She is the Metalwood Development Director over at Titleist. Pretty awesome golfer, too. I'm told she's the best Luttrell at Titleist. Stephanie, it's great to have you on.
Thanks, Dan. And I'm happy to be here with you in the THP crew.
Absolutely. What do you think about that moniker? Because Aaron, your husband Aaron, who works in the Vokey team, is pretty invested in everyone knowing that.
I like to say he's pretty self-deprecating because he's pretty great at everything he does for the Titleist team as well. So for those that don't know, Aaron's the product manager for Vokey Wedges, so works with Corey and Aaron Dill and Shane, and also Bob, obviously. So he's got a lot of great stories and a lot of great contributions as well to bring to the table. So I like to say we've got both ends of the bag covered, right? We've got the top end and the bottom end of the bag covered with the Luttrells.
Absolutely. We've had two events this year, specifically between the two of you. I've had the chance to go to both of them. One was Metalwoods and one was Vokey's. I'm always curious about this. You know, there is a little bit of self-deprecation there, but does it get a little competitive when you guys are, chatting around the dinner table like, hey, my product's doing this or my product's doing that? Like my product hit the fairway on the 19th hole of that tournament. Well, mine, my Vokey got him out of the bunker and saved the win. So is there much competitiveness there?
I would say no, we're both each other's biggest cheerleaders, right? Without saying that Aaron's a cheerleader, but I hope for his product team to have the most success, and obviously we're chasing them in terms of market share and tour use, but we've been #1 on tour with Titleist Metalwoods and drivers specifically for about the past 6 years. So we're knocking on the door behind those Vokey wedges for sure.
That's awesome. I want to share with people your background a little bit because it's pretty incredible. You were a former college golfer. Do you want to tell us how that came about and what that was like?
Yeah, absolutely. I fell in love with the game of golf really in high school. I was a late adopter to the game. My dad introduced it to both my brother and I, and now we both work in golf. He's a head golf professional back in Michigan at Harbor Point Golf Club, but when I was playing golf in high school, I got a lot better really quickly. I went from like my freshman year of high school shooting 110 to by my senior year of high school shooting even par, and kind of set my sights on the fact that I wanted to play in college, but I also had always been really gifted in science and math. And so tried to start to look into what careers there were around golf. And I saw that engineers design golf equipment. And so set my sights on the University of Michigan, which I grew up in Michigan, so go blue all the way, and contacted the coach and said, hey, been a part of a state championship winning team the past couple of years. Is there any opportunity? And she gave me the opportunity to walk on. I didn't really have that much of an amateur pedigree, you could say, being a little bit late to the game. But she gave me the opportunity to open the door, and I walked on and I made the team, and I was able to participate at U of M for 4 years straight. So it was a great experience getting to study at such an esteemed engineering institution with the University of Michigan, but also getting to play at a Division I level and to get to compete and really kind of shrink the size of the university by being a part of that type of team too.
That's pretty incredible. And to be able to have that passion and go and learn and do other things, knowing that a career would be ready for you, or at least you're hoping to be. So what happened out after college? How did you end up in California?
Well, I would say in the early 2000s, as those of you that were also maybe graduating from colleges, and in the early 2000s, the job market was a little tight. And so I ended up going to the PGA show with my brother one year and just trying to make a network of connections. And I met people from the Acushnet company, which is Titleist's parent company. I met people from Cleveland Golf at the time, and also from Callaway and TaylorMade, and just tried to kind of explain who I was, what I wanted to do. And Callaway ended up creating an opportunity to bring me to California. So that was where my first job was straight out of college. I I joined Alan Hocknell's team when he first became a manager there of their innovation group. And I did motion capture testing for a couple of years. And then fast forward 2 years later, I got a phone call from the people that I had met at Cleveland. And they said, "Hey, are you still interested in working in the golf industry?" And I said, "Well, I already do." And they said, "Well, we're looking to expand and do products specifically for our tour players. And would you be interested in a design and development position?" And that's absolutely the direction that I had always dreamed of going. And so I leapt at that opportunity, and I went to Cleveland, and then I had the opportunity to do tour products for them. So I worked on drivers all the way through to putters for about 3.5 years, worked with VJ when he was #1 in the world, and was able to really learn a lot through that experience and transition that into now I've been with Titleist for 17 years, leading the metalwood category team for the R&D group.
I think leading is a great way of putting it, considering what's going on this year. But I want to dial it back really quickly, because we had the privilege of playing golf at Hidden Creek last week. So I've already sort of picked your brain a little bit about this, and this is something that I really had earmarked for the show. You mentioned your first experience into the golf industry itself was this motion capture component. And that really just made me think, because a lot of people who we have on the show, we get to celebrate the idea that golf has changed from a technological standpoint, like massively over the last couple decades. So, thinking back to the earlier portions of your career, is it wild to see what has changed in that space, or even more interestingly enough, what stayed the same?
Yeah, I like to think of motion capture research as the most amazing research tool that we have available to us as engineers. It allows us to really systematically and very accurately assess the player's swing. So to think that that was happening 20 years ago, and to think about it's still happening now to this day at Titleist and our R&D team, we have a data analytics and motion capture research group that we're constantly looking at different metrics of golf clubs and how that affects the player and how it can influence their ability to gain distance, gain consistency, ultimately unlock more performance. And so it's exciting to see how that technology has continued to evolve, and just also how we have advanced in terms of our ability to use artificial intelligence, to utilize finite element analysis, and really drive virtual predictions on our designs before we ever commit to making prototypes or making real physical parts too.
So in terms of motion capture, and just to sort of bring this all together, what exactly does that do to propel things forward? Does it just give you an early idea based on the interaction that a club head would have with a golf ball? Like, are you in the right direction for what you're thinking about? Is it going to sort of help you tailor the next club to support a certain flaw? Maybe if you're looking for a draw model, or where you're going to place weight, like how does that completely work?
Well, a lot of what we utilize it for is to really understand how, when you change metrics of a golf club head or a golf club in its entirety, how it affects the player response. So we're able to look at different swing types, different parameters associated with the way that the player swings the golf club. And when you change physical attributes of the golf club head or the golf club, the impact that has on their ability to deliver it. And so through that, obviously we can better understand through those player characterizations, are there ways for us to design better equipment for them, and how we can really influence and improve performance.
It's such a cool thing, because you're obviously getting better at it year over year, but you have like the sort of skeletons of what has worked incredibly well for a company like Titleist for so long. It's nice to know that that does have a solid bit of continuation. How much of that is done over at TPI, and how much is that at headquarters? Is it a mix of both?
Yeah, a little bit of both. We're under a massive renovation. Actually, we're about a year into a massive renovation at our Titleist Performance Institute, which is just about 20 minutes north of our club headquarters, you could say, in Carlsbad. So it's TPI's in Oceanside, California. We have an advanced research center there, which we lovingly called the ARC, and it contains our motion capture bays with force plate technology, with 3D infrared camera systems. We also do a lot of our golf ball R&D comes out to California and does a lot of testing, because you can test year round, obviously, in Southern California. So they're testing year round with their robots in that facility as well. So, and then our TPI team with Greg and Dave have a great facility there to support all athletes as they strive to improve their performance through their physical capability too.
Awesome. That's cool. One of the questions I have as it relates to club design is this almost unintentional reality that when you chase something, you end up at the extreme of it. And we've definitely seen a fair bit of that in golf, where we're going to get as low spin as possible. And then, oh, wait, forgiveness probably matters. And we can only go so far before, things fall off the planet. Not to cite specific examples. I think everyone knows what we're talking about. How is that in terms of your process? Is it fun to chase certain things, and it's fun to find out that like that cutting edge between really supporting a golf swing and just creating more problems?
Yeah, the pendulum always swings, right?
Right.
And so I think in innovation and in research, which we have those functional areas that are more blue sky oriented within our team, yes, it's always our greatest opportunity to try something and test the limits, right? To test what would fail and what is too far with respect to taking something, per your example, taking something extremely low spin, or taking something extremely high ball flight, or taking something to an extreme forgiveness level. What is the impact on the overall player? Ultimately, when it comes down to Titleist, and what I like to say kind of our Metalwoods mantra is, we talk about a balanced design approach, and it's not super sexy to talk in that framework, but what that boils down to is that we're looking at each attribute of driver, fairway, and hybrid performance, and we're saying, how do we take all of those attributes and dial them all up? Not take one to necessarily dial it up to 11, but to take them all and bring them all up to really maximize performance and consistency across the board.
That was something that I experienced during my fitting with the Metalwoods. The team here in Ohio really broke down the idea that you guys were understanding that there were certain values that are in play, and each head, obviously plays a pretty significant role. But to me, it was pretty clear that this version, GT being what it is, sort of shifted the storyline of that a little bit more, where I was notoriously like a TSR4 kind of guy. Well, suddenly I'm like celebrating in GT3, and it's like, okay, I can kind of get the best of both worlds here. I can get a little bit of support finally, but my spin's not flying, way off the map. So you'd mentioned like sort of dealing with those needed sliders that people end up having and trying to get fit into. Was that a challenge in GT, or did it really seem to fit in easily once you had the framework?
I think with respect to kind of where we were trying to go with GT, one of our design goals was to see if we could bring center gravities slightly lower and more forward, because by doing that, we could positively affect spin to launch ratio, as you just kind of noted, right? Like anytime we can make a driver that's higher launch and lower spin, that's going to lead to greater carry distance for more players more often, and more total distance as well. But a lot of times when you do that, you end up sacrificing in terms of overall stability. And so that really became the challenge for us, is how do we execute against that, right? Deliver a CG that we know is going to deliver more distance on center, but also lead to a design that's going to be incredibly stable when you mishit it as well. So that combination was kind of that, you could call it not the final frontier, but it's one of those frontiers and those hurdles that we're constantly trying to seek and reach for. In doing that as well, we were also focused on how do you deliver in a chassis that's also exceptionally fast. And we have a PhD aerodynamicist within our R&D team. And so leveraging the shaping research that he's done in combination with what our goals were, there was a lot of things that were kind of in conflict with one another, that as we kind of sought out GT and how do we unlock all of these performance variables, we had to really kind of look at how to manage them and how to optimize all of them up to maximum levels, which is kind of why it's called generational technology, right? There were so many big shifts there that we were trying to accomplish from a goal perspective.
Well, I think, not to say that it's a bad thing, but I think Titleist being the type of company you are, this idea that you don't want to go to a visual extreme. You don't want to do anything that's outside of the realm of what people believe is a Titleist product. You don't have the same, I would argue, level of freedom to put some crazy stuff on your driver, or, you know, get a shape that people are kind of freaked out. Like, and listen, I'm talking about the square one. Obviously, it wasn't super rare. It was kind of weird, but you know what I mean? Like, you just don't have that same level of room because you very much respect the tradition that comes with the Titleist brand, which to me is fascinating, because when people put down the GT3, I say, hey, check this out. They're like, oh my God, that looks good. What a Titleist. Like it just maintained that traditional Titleist profile. That had to have been a challenge.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that I always, you know, it's something that is exceptionally challenging, right? But it's also, we know that that's what the better player and all players are looking for, right? You want something that inspires confidence. And so, you know, we could easily make something that shows all of the tech, but ultimately, when it comes down to, you need a driver that when you set it up down behind the golf ball, it's going to inspire confidence in the address position. And in this realm with GT, I probably got the biggest kick out of when it was the early tour launch and no one knew what the technology was, and everyone's sitting there looking at GT and saying, looks like the same old, right, from Titleist, because visually, from the aesthetics on the outside, a lot of the technology in these drivers and these fairway woods is under the hood. And that was absolutely an intentional choice by us, and that we know that when it comes down to it, what matters to golfers is how it performs. And if you can deliver that in a package that is really classic and really builds your confidence, then you're going to have a successful product as well.
Yeah, I think the one kicker to me has always been sound. I've been roasted for this. I don't know if there's enough hot melt in the world to solve some of the sound issues I've heard in the past. And unfortunately, I'm one of the guys who, you know, if it doesn't sound right, there's no way it's going to stay in the bag. As much as it'd be fun to hit or put on a launch monitor, the sound is crucial. And I think there's a lot going into that. And maybe we'll lead into that question, because I think the alternative there is, you get a chance to experience all these different types of materials. It's not the first time in this process you've introduced a new material at the potential cost of sounding slightly different than what people recognize you for. So, you know, from my perspective, I would assume that sound is incredibly important to you guys over there at Titleist. Is that realistic to say? And were you surprised or really excited when you got the sound profile out of GT?
Yeah, that's a great point, in that when we talk about all of those design metrics that we're seeking out as we start a new driver project or a new fairway project, sound and feel are high on the metrics. I'm not sure how many of the THPers have watched kind of our Finding Feel series, but you kind of hear about that within our iron design process. But it's also a critical and key component and a design metric for us within our metalwoods too. And so as we started to think about how do we take, you know, move on from TSR and how do we design something that's going to be even better for us, we had really taken an all titanium construction as far as we could with regards to wall thickness and discretionary mass and overall mass distribution. We knew that eventually we would have to move into a multi-material design and construction, and GT is that. And for those that haven't seen, this is kind of the overall kind of form of it, is that we have a crown wrap now, and this is kind of looking at the broken apart parts of GT3. Oh, my lights just went off because I haven't moved enough, y'all. This is the beauty of like modern technology, right? I get plummeted into darkness. But speaking of the material, Dan Stone, who was our SVP for many years, I worked with him for 18 years at Cleveland and then now at Titleist, and Chuck Golden is our SVP of our R&D team now. But Dan came into my office about 6 years ago and he said, eventually, Stephanie, we're going to have to move away from all titanium. And he goes, and this is the future. And he dropped this piece of material on my desk, and it was just a sheet. And I said, what is that? Because as he dropped it on my desk, it sounded like metal. And that is our proprietary matrix polymer that we brought forth into GT. It's a material that's never been used in golf club head design before. And part of, for us, what made it unique is it is a composite material, but the resin that impregnates that composite material is an engineering polymer. And those engineering polymers you can actually utilize to tune acoustic frequency and resonant frequency. And so for us, that really differentiated as we think about how we like to do driver design and fairway design and how important sound and feel is. We knew how authentic, our drivers needed to sound to an all titanium construction. So the closer we could get to that, we knew that's what players prefer, right? They prefer something that sounds fast, that sounds compressed. And this material, as we moved into multi-material, allowed us to unlock that and really deliver exceptional sound, but in a way that allowed us to meet our mass property goals, as well as we were moving into these new aerodynamic shapes and had new targets in terms of what we were trying to do with CG and inertia.
Well, so I had a little laugh halfway through there because I can just envision all the THPers when you're dropping all these names, like the drool sticking out of one side of the mouth, just saying, yeah, I like it. It's good. Really like it. The tech that goes into it's super fun. When you took the crown off, to me it showcased the ability to just really spread that weight around at your leisure where it needs to be in the head. Is that obviously? Well,
I just dropped it all the way down to the floor.
Sounds like metal. But the question I have is that really where you get a chance to spread the weight around in the places you want? Is that one of the biggest features that you're trying to go for there, is just purely weight placement?
Yeah, as we started to look at the overall shaping of the drivers and our work with Steve Ogg, who is our aerodynamicist, that led to essentially a reclassification of the shape, that the back end of the head is actually quite a bit higher to achieve those aerodynamic improvements. And when we're doing that, we're looking to unlock more speed for all players through club head speed. So reducing drag, improving the way that the head moves through the air, and in light of that, knowing what we had targets of a lower CG, obviously those two were in conflict. And so we absolutely needed a multi-material construction to unlock that. But as we challenged our engineers to think about this, we said, we have to do this in a different way, because just bonding panels onto the crown and the sole is actually still going to lead to kind of overlapping joints up high where we don't need them from a mass property standpoint. And so this crown wrap construction and the way that we've executed wrapping it down onto the sole and the placement of the bonding ledges, all of that is incredibly intentional in terms of allowing us to distribute the mass where we wanted it to be. And you can see here, we kind of showcase what we call split mass construction too, in that you've got a large amount of mass in the front of the head. I'm showing you GT3, which has our forward track system for CG adjustability, but then a large amount of mass aft in the head too. And it's that balancing. I like to call it kind of almost like when you picture a teeter-totter, right? We're trying to find that exact sweet spot where we get that forward low CG, but also keep a large amount of mass in the aft portion of the head, which is allowing us to really create exceptional stability while achieving higher launch and lower spin.
That's pretty awesome to see it broken down, especially with the components right in front of us. One thing I'm super interested about is you have a guy walk into your office and just drop this new piece of material in front of you and say, okay, go have fun, Is it kind of like someone having 4 quarters trying to break $1 and then someone coming in with nickels and dimes and pennies and say, okay, now do it differently? When you see this new material show up, is it just super exciting for your job to say, all right, now what can we do?
Yeah, I think we were incredibly excited about what it could do for us, but because it's such a new technology, It's something that took us a while to design and engineer and figure out how to actually produce. One of the things that, we hold dear is our quality standards as well, and our ability to make something that's going to be last throughout the expected life cycle of a player, as well as to meet our performance goals and criteria. So it took us, from that initial foray of here's a material, right? Is how do you actually make this piece? How do you make something that has this complex curvature? How do you join it to the all titanium part? How do you allow this to, pass our extreme air cannon durability test standards, which we utilize to really benchmark it for the fastest players, right? And then moving forward into that is, what's the best way to apply it, right? In terms of head design, how do you place those joints in the right locations? And then can you develop a supply chain that's robust? Because we want to make sure that as the demand grows for Titleist metalwoods, that we can meet that demand as well. So all of those factors play in. The last one's probably the least pertinent to the golfer, right? Our ability to deliver it at the levels that we need to. But ultimately, the material is delivering upon the mass property goals, but also doing it in a way that satisfies that attribute of sound, right? How do I deliver something that just brings a lot of joy when you hit it?
So in development, is it a bit scary or exciting or frustrating or concerning when you finally get this thing ready and you think, man, this is really different, this is really good, and then you take it to tour and just like, oh my God, what are they going to say?
I always get those nervous butterflies, right?
Yeah.
I will say that GT and all of our early prototype testing had tested very, very well against TSR and against the competitive landscape as well. But that being said, you truly always kind of, it's like Christmas Eve, right? When you wake up the next morning and you're initially doing those prototype tests with the tour players. And we at Titleist, we integrate closely with our tour team throughout the development process. So JJ Van Wiesenbeck, Liam McDougall, they both represent our PGA Tour and our DP World Tour teams, and Chloe Robinson on LPGA. Throughout all of the development of GT, we had players hitting prototypes. And so whether they come to Oceanside, or we did actually an early tour shoot where we did one at Panther National at JT's new course down there, and one at Silverleaf in Scottsdale. And we brought in a lot of our team players that are on staff with us and gave them early exposure and showed them the construction. And honestly, in the tour truck, I had that experience with Jordan and Justin of showing them kind of those pull-apart pieces that I just showed you. And you could see the registration of concern on their face. Like, is this what my driver is going to look like, right? And then when we opened the drawer on our truck and pulled out the finished GT3 and GT2 and GT4, they were like, you could see the sense of relief also pass over their face, that this driver looks like something I'm incredibly comfortable with. The last thing we want as an engineering group is to deliver something that a player says, I can't play this because of the way that it looks, right? And so for us to be able to bring forward all of this new innovation and technology in GT, but do it in a classic package that players like Jordan, Justin, Ludwig, Cam Young, like Wyndham, that they're all going to, see and say, oh my gosh, this looks exactly like my current driver. But they recognize the performance straight out of the box with it, with the speed, launch and spin and consistency. It's been very exciting to see, for sure.
Well, you say that, but it sounds like there's been a little bit of shift on tour for guys being more willing to go to a different head. And I think JT in the GT2 has been one of the biggest surprises. What is that like normally? And did you see a bit of a change from the previous models to GT for that?
Yeah, I think with tour players in general, they're always the most optimally and from a launch and spin perspective, and they're always they're already very optimal, right? They wouldn't be on tour if they weren't quite dialed in from a launch and spin perspective. So they're the hardest players to fit, right? And to move off the needle of their current performing product, because it has to be better in order for them to move. And so in the case of Justin, moving from a TSR3 to a GT2, he's one that actually has been experimenting with some lighter and longer builds. And so as he started to move towards those lighter and longer builds, JJ had worked with him and said, we might want to move into a chassis that has a little bit more all around forgiveness across the face, just because by moving to that longer build, you might miss it a little bit more, and having more of that stability would factor in. And he saw one of the things we took great pride in with GT2 is that because of the shape changes and because of the face technologies that we have with speed ring and VFT in combination now, those are all making it equally fast to TSR3, which was probably our fastest model that we had ever made before then. So now GT2, GT3, very comparable from an overall speed and aerodynamics perspective. So he wasn't leaving anything on the table from that perspective, and he was only gaining with regards to that stability as he tested some of those longer builds.
Yeah, it's fun to watch. I like to joke around that I don't care what the tour players play, but of course I do. Of course we all do. It's fascinating when they make a change purely because it works for their game. That's something that I tend to pay attention to, because there's obviously a net benefit to them doing that, and to get away from a head that you traditionally expect them in. And I didn't even find that out until after my fitting, and I went from 4 to 3, and then in the fairway it's 3 to 2, and it's like, okay, maybe now that I see this guy on tour doing it, I was like, okay, maybe that shouldn't be surprising to me. Maybe I should expect something like that out of this type of technology jump.
That's a great point, Dan. And another example of that was when we did early prototype testing with Wyndham Clark. Wyndham had tested GT3. He had played TSR3 for years. He's probably scared me the most at our tour launch at the Memorial this year, in that he showed up with no drivers in the bag. He was that excited about GT, and based on his experience with the prototype testing, and he had been asking JJ for it for months, saying, when can I have it? When can I tee it up? And so when a U.S. Open champion from the year before, and he's 1 week out from defending his U.S. Open, shows up the week before without a driver in the bag and says, I'm all in. We took him through his paces at Memorial and really tested out GT3 and GT2. And we gave him two great options, that if his body was feeling really great and loose and strong, a GT3 that was a little bit stronger ball flight and a little flatter. But if his body didn't feel as good, we had a GT2 option that launched a little higher, spun a little bit more, just gave him a little bit more flight stability that he could rotate between. And the funny thing was, at Memorial, he put both of them in play on different days. So that just points to the fact that the tour players are constantly looking at how to maximize their performance as well, and how to address kind of whether it be their changes from week to week or just how their body feels from day to day too.
Mm-hmm. How about the LPGA? What's the reaction been like over there?
Yeah, we're off to a great start. Just within the past 2 years, we made a significant investment in our LPGA presence. We have a full-time clubs rep out there. I mentioned her name, Chloe Robinson. And so now we have about, I think, 5 or 6 what we call full product line users. Emily Pedersen is one that we worked with we launched the Meyer event, which is in Grand Rapids, Michigan, my hometown, actually. So that was kind of a fun one to get to go back to and work with the women there. But Emily had participated in our prototype testing, as well as Alexa Pano. And we've been able to work through fitting and testing them as well. One of the things that really jumped out in our LPGA Tour launch was the performance of the GT fairways. What Tom Bennett, who's kind of my right-hand man on our team, he does the design and engineering on our fairways and hybrids with the group. And he had really sought to make these the highest launching fairways. If anything, what we hear from the marketplace is that fairways are the most difficult golf clubs to hit in the bag, right? They're the longest golf clubs you consistently hit off the turf, and anything that we could do to make them get up in the air easier would be amenable to tour as well as to the public. And he's been able to execute that with using the same proprietary matrix polymer and applying a new L-cup face technology. We've been able to lower the CG lower than we've ever done in our fairway woods, and also unlock more speed and consistency on the face because of that L-cup. And Alexa was one that saw it straight out of the gate. She was using TSR 2 Plus, and we moved to the GT2, which in the 13.5 actually is kind of that larger footprint size now. It's just integrated into the GT2 line, and she put it straight in the bag. She saw the elevation in the ball flight, and it's really been interesting to see that, where players are looking for the ball to peak in a specific window, and they're like, I don't see it. Where is it? And we're like, oh, it's, it's 10 yards higher or 10 feet higher. And so those have been very exciting attributes to see. Emily, with the driver and her fitting, she saw really consistent spin performance. And that was very exciting for her, because anytime that we can really isolate and bring your spin consistency and narrow that, the range of spins that you see, ultimately that translates into downrange distance consistency. So she hit about 10 drives for me, and they were all within 5 yards of each other. And she's like, this is exceptional. Like, even when she missed it heel or toe, she saw great speed. So we're off to a great start there. We've got some good non-contract users too. In the Solheim Cup, we had 3 driver users in the Solheim Cup, 2 FPLs, and then 1 non-contract. So it's exciting to see us continue to grow in our presence there. We're not trying to be everything to everyone out there, but obviously trying to make an impact and provide great service and help LPGA players play their best as well.
So would you say the LPGA players are a little bit more discerning on the fairway woods and even hybrid models? And I want to sort of challenge that by saying, all due respect to the PGA Tour pros, if I want to be impressed by someone hitting a hybrid or a fairway wood, the LPGA is where I go. It's crazy what those ladies can do with them.
Yeah. It's I would say that they're definitely more used, right? In that there are a lot more fairways and hybrids in the bag on the LPGA Tour. We have seen a shift in the past couple of years on PGA Tour, though, with PGA Tour players moving away from maybe hybrids more towards high lofted fairways. I like to call it 7 Wood Nation is strong out on the PGA Tour. And so there's a lot of 21-degree fairway woods in play now that guys are looking to be able to have a versatile golf club that they can elevate and that's going to stop very quickly under the green. That's been the case for years on the LPGA Tour. Elena Sharp was a non-contracted player that, Chloe worked with her with GT fairways, and we saw her immediately move into all of the GT fairways. And she was one that had been playing TSI. So she was in kind of some older products, and she just started hitting them and saw the ball flight, saw the launch and spin consistency, and said, these are in the bag straight away. So it's been exciting to see. I think the fairway woods in general surprise and delight people the most. They don't expect them to fly that high and then to get up in the air and to still go. So it's been very exciting to see kind of that transition on LPGA as well as on PGA Tour too.
Mm-hmm. I have one more really big driving question for you. Ready for it?
Yeah, of course.
I know that in development you're working ahead. It's not like you launch GT and then head out for a spring vacation or summer vacation for a couple months. Like I know you guys are either years in advance or at least having a long conversation about what's coming down the pipe next. Is a lot of that reactionary, or some of it reactionary? If you see something interesting happening elsewhere, do you tend to there go the lights again.
I heard it beep.
do you tend to try and stay within your lane, or do you sometimes get in the way of what is shifting in the industry and try to support what golfers are looking for as well?
I think we are very much so focused on our golfer. And I like to say it's focused on the dedicated golfer. And that has evolved over the years. I think in the past, and we're still living with this kind of yoke of serious clubs for serious golfers. And I would like to just lay that yoke down and just say we're for the player that cares about investing in their game, loves playing golf, and loves to participate in it. And so for us, it's how do we attack that segment of the market, right? If you're a Titleist golf ball user, we want you to be utilizing Titleist golf clubs. And so as we kind of look towards the frontier of where we can go, we hold ourselves up to our own benchmark of like, well, how do we beat GT? And that was something that Dan was really legendary for as our former VP. He would always say, always forward, never backward, and would always challenge us to what's going to be the game changer for Titleist, right? What can we do to deliver performance? And that's one of the things as a player, former competitive player, and as you know, that science engineering side of my brain, I love most about being a part of this team is that we're solely focused on performance. And that's something that all golfers can really trust in with us, is that we're constantly trying to think about how do we make it better. And one of the things that our 2-year product life cycles help us to do is to actually make measurable improvements to our drivers, our irons, our wedges. And that's something that I think we take great pride in as an R&D team, right? That we're not trying to just sell a gimmick, but we're absolutely trying to make sure that every player can see the performance and can really use it to have more enjoyment on the golf course.
You mentioned the serious golfer. We happen to go and spend a couple days at Hidden Creek with, I would say, 7 or 8 pretty passionate golfers. I wouldn't say they're all particularly serious. And what I loved about that is we all got through the GT process. Everyone got fit, got to get them firsthand and experience it on a beautiful golf course like Hidden Creek. What resonated to me was everyone had a story to tell once the couple days of golf were over. Everyone got excited, and that doesn't say that they were all serious players. It says to me that you have this incredible new concept that really is a step up based on TSR, and these guys all have something to get excited about. To me, that's passion. That's not serious. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm a passionate golfer. I say golf is my passion. I live, kind of eat and breathe it. Obviously, it's my hobby, but it's also my career. It was so much fun watching guys like Snafu loved the 7-wood, and just to see his eyes light up and be like, this is my favorite club in my bag now, right? Or to see Ryan Yang, or
Yang.
It was Ryan G. I'm like, I want to call him Yanger because we started nicknaming him that. But he had a couple of mishits with GT, and he goes, I can't believe he re-teed a second ball and hit it, striped it. And he goes, the mishit was within 10 to 15 yards of, and it was a giant mishit. He was incredibly surprised that it was still in play and that it was as long as it was. So I think for me, that's one of the things I enjoy most. Obviously I have the joy of that I get to work with the best players in the world with our tour players, but I also love going to those types of events and getting to interact with golfers of all abilities and just see how the product performs in their hand, explain the technology, and really get to kind of do some market research as to what's important to those players and how do I help them find better satisfaction and more performance with each round of golf that they play.
Yeah, and then we get to find out just exactly how good of a golfer you are, which was not surprising, but fun to watch. I think I said you're kind of good at about 20 times in the course of one round.
I think I picked up your Canadian accent. I was like, yeah, sometimes right?
Yeah. Well, that's Ryan's fault, but that was a super fun couple days of golf, and to see the product in the hands of guys really engaging and enjoying it. I have to assume is one of the most rewarding parts of your job, and based on the fact that we've had guys like Talgi on the show, and now you, who clearly have a true passion for the game. It's hard not to want to play it. It's hard not to at least try it and say, well, it's fit for my game, because they obviously love it and they love golf too.
Yeah, I love to say when you go out to test GT, go hit them all, because they all offer something unique and different. And there's a reason why we make, all 4 models. In the spring, we'll have new hybrids, as well as our new 1 category. That's not leaving anything in the bag. I think Josh probably told you that as well. But right now we've got the 2, 3, and 4 driver models, and we've got the 2 and the 3 fairways. And I'm just excited to hear from the THP group what you all think when you go out and experience them. And they each have a unique position in terms of, what we're trying to do. That 4 is that ultra low spin one, but when you go and you flip the weight to the back, you actually deliver a really classic small headed shape with exceptional forgiveness. And it kind of lives between the 2 and the 3. And then you've got the 3 with that CG adjustability heel and toe that, you can unlock great speed and distance by aligning CG with impact and really opening up performance for that player. And then that 2, I play the 2. It's that maximum performance all around playability. I don't get to practice as much as I used to, obviously, in my university days. So I like to say I roll up as a trunk slammer sometimes. So I apologize for those that I get there an hour before to hit golf balls. But GT2 puts a little security blanket on me and helps me to hit, some nice high draw bombs every now and then off the tee.
Let me just casually say not needed, but totally understood. Stephanie, before we wrap up today, any questions for me that aren't related to a 1-iron?
Of course. You really taunted me. You wanted me to hit that 1-iron. I kept taunting you to keep hitting driver, right? Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, sorry, I was just going to say, unfortunately, after going through 2 months of just the best driving I've had in years using GT, I fell apart a week before I got to go play with the, Metalwood development director. So that was unfortunate, but the 1-iron saved me. Thank goodness it was a Titleist.
All good. No issues, buddy. I guess I would say, what did you notice most about GT since you've been fit with it and you've playing with it for the past couple of months? What stands out to you in the performance?
Yeah, I would say the sound is at the very forefront. Obviously, I'm playing a slightly different head, so I get to experience a couple of the benefits to that. The sound is a real standout to me, and I sort of led into this conversation saying I was sound obsessed, and I'm not messing around there. I do not care for a driver that forces sound on me. I have plenty of ball speed. I don't need to create sound. There's lots there when I hit it. So that was a huge starting point, and credit to Tim and Rod here in Ohio for walking me through 4 and 3 and just really landing on that 3. Because as soon as I started hitting it, kind of like the T150s, I was like, man, this is just the sound I'm looking for. And then counter to that, my okay swings when I'm really playing well are these like 10-yard cuts, and where I gain in the forgiveness around the head, the little extra spin you'd think would be there, but as I move around the face, missing a little bit, it sort of neutralizes that number to where I'm not seeing a huge difference. Now, on the button is on the button, but it's not disastrous, which you might not know about, but I certainly felt it. So. Well,
that's a great example. I saw a very similar thing with Cam Young. I might have told you this while we were playing, but when Cam was testing GT3, he loves to hit kind of a heel cut as his control shot. And when he's out of the middle of the face, he's, over 185 miles an hour, 10 or 11 degrees launch and like 2,100 RPMs of spin, what we all strive for, right? I wish I had those launch conditions and speed, but, on his heel misses, or what he would do to hit kind of that heel bleeder cut to just be a fairway finder, he'd see spin on TSR3 go up to, just around 3,000 RPMs of spin. GT3, because of how we've repositioned CG and kept that inertial stability up, he's seeing spin only be in that 24 to 2,600 range, and ball speed only drop off about a half mile an hour. And so what that means is that he can go to that heel cut control shot more often without having to leave distance on the table. And so that was very exciting for him, and part of the reason, he moved immediately into GT, and we saw him have good success. I know everybody probably saw him also get a little upset with himself. He's a fierce competitor at Rocket Mortgage, but we're excited to see him continue to have future success with GT too.
That's awesome. Well, you said kind of like, and then said a lot of things I'm not capable of. So I appreciated the almost comparison, because when I hit it low in the heel side, I call it hitting it on the adapter. So
meanwhile, I'm the drop kick toe miss. So, you know,
I never saw one of those. So you can say you hit them, but I don't buy it.
I appreciate that. I left them all back here in California.
All right. Fair enough. Last thought, Ballyhack or Hidden Creek? You get a chance to go to one next week. Which one are you picking?
You know, I loved Hidden Creek from the aspect of the way that we stayed at Hidden Creek, all being in that one house.
That was cool,
really
yeah.
Thing. So just the camaraderie and the dinners and the way that we all got to hang. But I think Ballyhack, just visually for me, because I love link style golf courses, it suited me a little bit more in that regard, and it's visually really a very cool golf course. So probably the nod a little bit to Ballyhack for the golf, but I loved kind of the facilities and just the way that we all got to be and hang at Hidden Creek. But honestly, all the golf clubs that I've had the pleasure of playing with THP and the Dormy Network have been amazing, and I can't wait until the next one.
Definitely. Hey, if you folks are out there and you're playing golf this weekend, have a good time, have a laugh, tell someone they're good at golf, because they're going to make fun of your accent in return, and everyone's going to have a good time with it. If you are a passionate player, go check out Titleist new GT products. They are very fun to hit, and they certainly have one option for you. And if not, wait till January, because there will be another one. So, yeah, we'll see you guys next week. Thanks, Stephanie.
Thanks, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.